Self-doubt is one of the greatest thieves of human potential. It doesn't scream at you, it whispers. It's that small, quiet voice inside your head that says, "You're not ready, you're not capable, who are you to try?" And because it whispers, it feels believable. That's why so many people live their entire lives beneath their true capacity, not because they lack talent, not because opportunity never came, but because they doubted themselves right at the edge of possibility. But here's the truth. Most people never realize. Self-doubt is not reality. It is not a fact about you. It is a story, a habit of the mind that repeats itself until you believe it. And if it's a habit, it can be broken. This is where the mindset shift begins. Because the moment you change the way you relate to your own thoughts, you destroy the roots of doubt forever. Every great thinker, every champion, every leader who ever walked this earth carried moments of doubt. The difference is, they learned to master it before it mastered them. They discovered that the mind can either imprison you with invisible walls or free you to build the life you want. And that freedom comes not from waiting for confidence to magically appear, but from shifting how you think, how you interpret pain, how you respond to failure, how you choose to see yourself when no one else is watching. In this episode, we'll walk through 12 mindset shifts, each one a blade cutting into the fabric of self-doubt until nothing of it remains. These shifts will show you how to trust yourself when the world stays silent, how to transform pain into power, how to recover from setbacks without losing belief, and how to build daily habits that make confidence your natural state. They'll teach you to find balance between ego and humility, to visualize a future that silences fear, and to live each day with clarity of purpose. This is not theory, it's practice. It's a roadmap forged from ancient wisdom, modern psychology, and the lived experience of people who have walked through fire and come out stronger. If you embrace these shifts, you will no longer be the person who waits, who hesitates, who wonders if they're enough. You will be the person who knows, and once you know, doubt has no power over you. Stop seeking validation. Start trusting yourself. If you want to destroy self-doubt forever, you must begin here, by cutting the root that feeds it, the constant search for validation. Most people don't realize how much of their lives are spent chasing the approval of others. We shape our choices to fit what our friends, family, or colleagues might say. We post online and wait for likes to confirm our worth. We hesitate in silence because we fear disapproval. And slowly, this dependence builds a cage, an invisible prison where self-doubt becomes the warden. Because when your confidence is built on what others think of you, it will collapse every time their opinion shifts. Think about how fragile that foundation is. People are inconsistent. They love you one day, criticize you the next. Their moods change. Their standards change. Sometimes their judgment has nothing to do with you at all. It's just a reflection of their own fears and frustrations. Yet, if your self-worth is tied to those fluctuations, then your sense of who you are will always be unstable. You'll always wonder, am I good enough today? This is why so many talented people stay small, not because they aren't capable, but because they let self-doubt creep in through the doorway of other people's opinions. The shift begins the moment you decide that your voice carries more weight than the crowd's, that you no longer need applause to move forward. This doesn't mean arrogance, and it doesn't mean ignoring all feedback. It means knowing the difference between guidance that can sharpen you and validation that enslaves you. Champions, thinkers, and creators of history had mentors, yes, but they did not need permission to step into their path. They trusted their own conviction, even when the world didn't see what they saw. The Stoics were clear on this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. That paradox is exactly what fuels self-doubt." You say you love yourself, yet you hand the authority over your worth to strangers, critics, or even loved ones whose views may be clouded. Why let them decide how far you go? Why let their limited vision limit your life? Imagine how many dreams have been buried in silence because someone waited for approval. The writer who never finished their book because no one cheered them on. The person who never spoke up in a meeting because they worried their idea wasn't good enough. The dreamer who never started the business because they feared laughter. In every case, the tragedy isn't lack of ability, it's lack of self-trust. They believed the lie of doubt because they were waiting for someone else to say, "You're ready." But here's the truth. No one will ever give you that permission. You must give it to yourself. So how do you start trusting yourself? By building evidence. Self-trust isn't just a mantra. It's a record you create with your own actions. Start by keeping the promises you make to yourself, no matter how small. If you tell yourself you'll wake up early tomorrow, do it. If you commit to writing a page, exercising for 20 minutes, or reaching out to someone you've been avoiding, follow through. Each act of consistency is a vote of confidence, a piece of evidence that says, "I can rely on me." Over time, these votes accumulate until your trust in yourself is unshakable. And when that trust is strong, self-doubt has no soil left to grow in. This shift also requires a change in how you interpret silence and criticism. Silence does not mean you are unworthy. Criticism does not mean you are incapable. They are simply neutral signals. The silence of others is just the absence of noise, not the absence of value. The criticism of others is just an opinion, not a verdict. Once you stop giving these things power, you stop feeding the voice of doubt. There is a quiet, commanding strength in those who no longer seek validation. You can feel it when they walk into a room. They don't explain endlessly. They don't beg to be understood. They don't shrink when questioned. They move with the confidence of someone whose approval comes from within. And that kind of energy is magnetic. People end up respecting you more when you stop asking for their respect. So ask yourself right now, how much of your life has been lived for applause? How many decisions have you delayed because you wanted someone else to nod first? And more importantly, how would your life look if you stopped waiting? What would you do differently if you already trusted yourself enough? The mindset shift is this. Stop seeking validation. Start trusting yourself. When you make that decision, the cage begins to break. Doubt loses its authority because you've stopped giving it the fuel it needs. You no longer need the world's permission. You've chosen yourself. And that choice is the first step toward destroying self-doubt forever. Build mental strength like a champion. Self-doubt thrives in weakness. It grows in the cracks of an undisciplined mind, in the spaces where fear, fatigue, and hesitation have free rein. If you want to destroy it, you need more than positive affirmations. You need strength. Not just physical strength, but mental toughness that carries you through uncertainty. This is why the second mindset shift is learning to build mental strength like a champion. Because champions don't wait for confidence to arrive. They create it through discipline, resilience, and a relentless refusal to quit. When we look at great athletes, thinkers, or leaders, it's easy to see their triumphs and forget the endless preparation behind them. We see the moment of victory, the gold medal, the breakthrough speech, the success story. But what truly defines them is the mental strength forged in silence. The The runner who laces up at 5 a.m. when no one is watching. The writer who sits in front of the page day after day, even when inspiration doesn't come. The leader who keeps making decisions in the face of uncertainty. These are not glamorous moments, but they are the ones that build an inner fortress against self-doubt. Mental strength does not mean you never feel fear or insecurity. Champions feel both. The difference is that they do not obey those feelings. They acknowledge them, but they move forward anyway. They know that waiting to feel ready is the fastest way to stay stuck forever. Readiness is not something you wait for. It is something you generate by acting in spite of uncertainty. And every time you do, you prove to yourself that self-doubt is lying. Stoic philosophy reminds us that the only true control we have is over our thoughts and actions. We cannot control what life throws at us. We cannot predict outcomes, but we can control how we prepare, how we respond, and how much effort we are willing to give. Building mental strength means shifting your attention away from fear of the unknown and toward the discipline of what is in front of you right now. That shift alone dismantles much of self-doubt, because it roots your confidence not in the illusion of guarantees, but in the reality of your preparation. Consider this. Self-doubt often shows up in the form of questions. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if others laugh? But when you train like a champion, those questions lose their sting because you already know the answer. You know you've put in the work. You know you've endured the grind. You know you can handle setbacks because you've been practicing resilience daily. In other words, you stop needing certainty of outcome because you already have certainty of effort. That is the bedrock of real confidence. Practical application matters here. Building mental strength is not abstract. It happens in the little decisions. Choosing to finish the task when you'd rather quit. Choosing to face the uncomfortable conversation instead of avoiding it. Choosing to stick with the plan when distractions pull you in every direction. Each of these choices is like lifting a weight at the mental gym. At first it's hard, but repetition makes you stronger. And over time, that strength becomes your natural state. Another critical piece of mental strength is recovery. Champions are not machines. They don't burn themselves to the ground. They understand that rest, reflection, and balance are part of toughness. Why? Because when you take care of your body and mind, you signal to yourself that you are worth investing in. That belief, repeated daily, crushes the voice of self-doubt because you've built evidence that you value yourself. So here's the mindset shift. Stop waiting to feel confident and start training your mind like a champion. Treat your doubts the way an athlete treats resistance, as part of the training, not as a reason to stop. Build habits of discipline and recovery. Face challenges deliberately, not accidentally. Over time, you'll realize that confidence isn't something you hope for, it's something you earn. And when you've earned it, self-doubt has no room left to breathe. Ask yourself, where in your life are you training like an amateur, waiting, hesitating, excusing? And what would change if you began approaching your mind like a champion trains their body, with consistency, with focus, with the willingness to endure discomfort for growth? That is where doubt dies. That is where your strength is born. Turn pain into purpose. That kills doubt. Self-doubt has a strange relationship with pain. For most people, pain becomes evidence that they are not strong enough, not good enough, not meant to succeed. When life hurts, whether through failure, rejection, loss, or disappointment, doubt rushes in to say, "See, you weren't capable. You never should have tried." And that voice grows louder the more you resist pain, the more you treat it as a sign of weakness. But here's the truth. Pain is not the proof that you are failing. Pain is proof that you are alive, that you are stretching, that you are on the path of growth. And if you can transform the meaning of pain into purpose, self-doubt will wither, because every difficulty becomes fuel rather than evidence against you. Think about it. Almost every person you admire has a story of pain that became the foundation of their purpose. The artist who used heartbreak to create timeless beauty. The leader who turned suffering into compassion and service. The athlete who turned injury into motivation for the greatest comeback. If they had listened to the voice of self-doubt, they would have stopped at the pain. But they didn't. They shifted. They redefined pain not as a signal to quit, but as a signal to create, to transform, to rise. The Stoics had a profound understanding of this. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." What does that mean? It means pain is not an obstacle, it's the path itself. When you face difficulty, the mindset shift is not to ask, "Why me?" but to ask, "What is this here to teach me?" Pain stops being something you endure and starts being something you use. And when you begin to use it, the grip of self-doubt loosens. There's a reason people who have gone through deep suffering often emerge with a strength that others envy. It's because they've learned what most avoid, that purpose forged in the fire of pain is unbreakable. A life without struggle may feel comfortable, but it rarely builds conviction. Conviction comes from scars, and once you have conviction, doubt has no power. So how do you actually make this shift? First, you must stop running from pain. Avoidance is the breeding ground of self-doubt. Every time you try to numb, distract, or escape, you're silently telling yourself you can't handle it. But when you face pain directly, when you sit with it, reflect on it, and ask what it demands of you, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than you thought. That proof rewires your relationship with yourself. Second, you must frame pain as a teacher. Instead of asking, "What did this take from me?" ask, "What can this give me?" A rejection can teach resilience. A failure can teach strategy. A loss can teach empathy. The lesson is always there, but you only find it when you stop labeling pain as the enemy. Pain is not here to break you, it's here to shape you. Third, connect your pain to a greater purpose. Champions and leaders don't just endure suffering for themselves. They turn it outward, using it to inspire and uplift others. When you take the lessons you've learned in hardship and use them to serve, lead, or create, the pain no longer feels wasted. It becomes meaningful. And meaning is the ultimate antidote to doubt. Because when you know why you endured, the question of whether you are capable vanishes. Imagine your life if every painful moment you've ever experienced was not wasted, but woven into a story of purpose. Imagine looking back at heartbreak, failure, and rejection, not with bitterness, but with gratitude, because they equipped you to stand stronger today. That is the freedom of this mindset shift. You stop seeing pain as the evidence of your limits, and you start seeing it as the pathway to your strength. The next time self-doubt whispers in the middle of pain, when it says you can't handle this, you're not good enough, you should give up. Pause. Ask yourself instead, how can I turn this into purpose? What meaning can I extract that will make me stronger? That question flips the entire narrative. Suddenly, pain isn't proof against you, it's proof for you. Proof that you are being refined, not reduced. The mindset shift is simple but powerful. Pain is not the end of your story. Pain is the beginning of purpose. And when you choose to see it that way, self-doubt loses its greatest weapon. It can no longer use struggle to convince you that you're weak. Instead, every struggle becomes a reminder that you are capable of creating meaning, no matter what life throws your way. That is how turning pain into purpose kills doubt permanently. Practice, surrender, and let go of what you can't control. One of the greatest sources of self-doubt comes from the illusion of control. We cling to outcomes, to people, to circumstances we wish we could bend to our will, and when they don't move as we expect, when life resists our grip, we begin to question ourselves. Maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe I should have done more. Maybe this failure is my fault. Doubt festers in that gap between what we want to control and what we actually can. The mindset shift that destroys this cycle is surrender, the ability to let go of what lies outside your command and focus entirely on what belongs to you, your actions, your thoughts, your choices. Self-doubt often thrives because people waste their energy trying to manage the unmanageable. We cannot control how others feel about us. We cannot control the timing of opportunities. We cannot control the random turns of fortune or misfortune that life throws our way. Yet we exhaust ourselves trying, and when the world refuses to obey, we assume the problem must be us. This is a trap. The more you try to control the uncontrollable, the more powerless you feel, and the more doubt you cultivate. The Stoics built their entire philosophy around escaping this trap. Epictetus said, "Some things are in our control and others not. If you confuse them, you will suffer." Modern psychology agrees. Anxiety and doubt escalate when you fixate on outcomes you cannot guarantee. But when you surrender to the reality of limits, when you accept that external results will never be fully yours, you reclaim your strength. Because what is in your control is always enough. Your effort, your perspective, your response. Think about the last time you obsessed over something outside your control. Maybe you were waiting for a response from someone important, or watching the outcome of a project that depended on factors bigger than you. Notice how powerless you felt, how the silence or delay started breeding questions. Did I mess up? Should I have done something different? Am I really capable? That spiral of doubt wasn't created by reality. It was created by clinging to what wasn't yours. Now imagine shifting your energy. Instead of obsessing over what they will think, what they will do, or whether the outcome will swing in your favor, you anchor yourself in what you can command, showing up with your best work, choosing integrity over shortcuts, practicing patience, keeping discipline. Suddenly the noise quiets. Doubt doesn't have space to multiply because you've redirected your focus to the only ground where you can actually stand firm. Surrender is not weakness. It is one of the most powerful acts of strength. Weakness is thrashing against the tide, wasting all your energy on resistance until you drown. Strength is realizing the tide is not yours to control, and instead focusing on how you swim. Champions know this. They don't waste mental energy worrying about the scoreboard or the cheers of the crowd. They lock their attention on the game they can play, the discipline they can execute, the mindset they can maintain, and because of that, they free themselves from doubt. To practice this shift, start asking yourself in moments of tension, is this within my control or not? If it is, act decisively. If it isn't, release it. Write it down, say it aloud. Do whatever you need to remind yourself. This is not mine to carry. Every time you do this, you train your mind to let go of the endless loops of doubt that come from clinging to things beyond you. This doesn't mean apathy. You still care about outcomes, about relationships, about success, but you recognize that your responsibility ends where your control ends. That recognition is liberating. It cuts off doubt before it can grow, because doubt thrives on questions you'll never have answers to. Will they like me? Will this succeed? Will the timing be right? The answer doesn't matter. What matters is whether you showed up, whether you gave your all, whether you lived aligned with your values. That's enough. That's always enough. So here's the shift. Surrender what isn't yours and double down on what is. Let go of other people's opinions. Let go of outcomes you can't dictate. Let go of the timing of life's unfolding. Instead, claim your actions, your focus, your effort. The paradox is this: when you release the uncontrollable, you don't lose power, you gain it. And in that space of clarity, self-doubt withers, because doubt needs chaos to thrive. Once you surrender and simplify, you leave it with nothing to feed on. The mindset shift is this: stop trying to control what was never yours. Start mastering what has always been yours. That is surrender. And in that surrender, you will find the unshakable confidence that destroys self-doubt forever. Visualize a future that silences doubt. Self-doubt thrives in the absence of vision. When your future looks vague, uncertain, or undefined, your mind fills the empty space with fear. It begins whispering, "You don't know where you're going. You're lost. Maybe you're not capable of more." But here's the truth: the future does not come ready-made. It's imagined first, then built. And when you visualize your future with clarity and conviction, you starve doubt of its favorite weapon, uncertainty. You replace hesitation with direction. You silence fear with a picture so vivid that it becomes undeniable. Visualization is not daydreaming. It's not idle fantasy. It's a deliberate mental practice that champions, philosophers, and leaders across history have used to transform potential into reality. Why does it work? Because your brain does not clearly distinguish between a vividly imagined experience and a lived one. Neuroscience confirms this. When you visualize yourself succeeding, your mind and body begin rehearsing for that reality. The pathways of belief are built before the event happens. In other words, visualization creates the inner certainty that self-doubt cannot argue with. Think of an athlete standing at the starting line. Long before the race begins, they've already run it 1,000 times in their mind. They've seen every stride, felt every breath, imagined every push to the finish line. By the time the gun fires, their body and mind are prepared, not just physically, but mentally. Compare that to the person who has never pictured their victory, who steps up with uncertainty clouding every thought. The difference isn't talent, it's mental preparation. One has rehearsed belief, the other has rehearsed doubt. When you fail to visualize your future, you allow self-doubt to write the script for you, and self-doubt always writes a tragedy. It fills the pages with fear, failure, embarrassment, and limitation. But when you take the pen back, when you start deliberately picturing the life you want, the strength you need, the person you're becoming, you reclaim authorship. And that act of authorship silences doubt, because it forces your mind to practice winning instead of losing. The Stoics didn't use the word visualization, but they practiced a form of it through premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity. They imagined future challenges not to scare themselves, but to prepare. By picturing difficulties ahead of time, they stripped them of their power. Similarly, you can use visualization not only to see your triumphs, but to see yourself facing obstacles with strength. When you've already imagined yourself enduring, succeeding, and rising, the voice of doubt has nothing left to say. How do you practice this shift? Start small. Close your eyes and picture yourself succeeding at something you've been hesitant to attempt. Imagine every detail, what you're wearing, what the room feels like, the emotions running through you, the words you say, the faces of those around you. Don't just see the moment, feel it. Let it sink into your nervous system as if it already happened. Repeat this daily, and notice how your body begins to respond with familiarity rather than fear. Then expand your vision. What does your life look like a year from now if you live without doubt? How do you walk? How do you speak? How do you carry yourself? What decisions are you no longer afraid to make? By painting this picture repeatedly, you create a gravitational pull, a future so clear that it guides your present choices. Doubt weakens because it cannot argue with a mind that has already rehearsed victory. Some people resist visualization because they think it feels unrealistic. But what's more unrealistic? Building a vivid mental map of the life you want, or wandering aimlessly while expecting confidence to appear out of nowhere. Self-doubt thrives in aimlessness. Clarity kills it. And visualization is the tool that creates that clarity. So here's the mindset shift. Stop letting doubt paint your future with fear. Start painting it yourself with vision. Train your mind to see yourself strong, capable, and victorious before the world sees it. Because once you've seen it clearly within, it becomes far easier to create without. And when you hold that vision consistently, self-doubt grows silent, not because it has disappeared entirely, but because it no longer has the power to convince you that you're lost. You know where you're going. You've already seen it. That is the power of visualization. It is not wishful thinking. It is mental training. And with it, you replace uncertainty with clarity, fear with direction, hesitation with momentum. Doubt cannot survive in a mind that already knows its destination. Find balance between ego and humility. Self-doubt often swings between two extremes. On one side, you shrink yourself with humility that becomes self-erasure. You undervalue your abilities, dismiss your achievements, and convince yourself you're unworthy. On the other side, you inflate yourself with ego that is fragile, defensive, and desperate for validation. Both extremes feed doubt. Too much humility convinces you that you're not enough. Too much ego masks your fear until the smallest criticism shatters you. The mindset shift that destroys doubt is learning to balance the two, to carry yourself with quiet confidence rooted in truth, not arrogance, and with humility rooted in strength, not self-denial. Let's be clear, ego itself is not the enemy. A healthy ego allows you to stand tall, to assert your worth, to defend your boundaries. Without it, you risk being walked over, ignored, or silenced. But ego without humility becomes blind. It makes you overestimate your abilities, deny your weaknesses, and live in constant fear of exposure. And ironically, the bigger your ego, the bigger your doubt, because deep down, you know the image you project doesn't fully match reality. You're always waiting for someone to call your bluff. On the other hand, humility without balance is equally dangerous. It tells you not to speak up, not to try, not to believe in yourself because others might know better. You bow so low to the opinions of others that you erase your own. This false humility doesn't protect you, it paralyzes you, and self-doubt thrives in that paralysis. It whispers, "See, you stayed quiet because you knew you weren't good enough." The Stoics modeled balance beautifully. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor of Rome, wrote constantly about reminding himself that he was just a man, that power could vanish, that pride was foolish, and yet he never diminished his responsibility or denied his strength. He carried humility about his humanity while still embodying the authority of his position. That's the balance. You recognize your limitations without being limited by them. You know your worth without inflating it. So how do you practice this balance in daily life? Start by being radically honest with yourself. Admit your strengths without shame. Too many people downplay what they're good at out of fear they'll seem arrogant. But hiding your gifts only feeds doubt. At the same time, admit your weaknesses without fear. Pretending you have none makes you fragile. When someone points them out, you collapse. But when you've already acknowledged them, they lose their sting. Honesty about both sides is what steadies you. Second, shift how you respond to praise and criticism. Praise should not inflate you beyond reality. Accept it, appreciate it, but don't let it define you. Criticism should not crush you into silence. Evaluate it, learn from it, and let go of what isn't useful. This middle ground is where self-doubt has no foothold, because your worth is no longer swinging on the pendulum of external opinion. Third, ground your confidence in action, not image. Ego seeks to look confident. True balance seeks to be confident. Confidence is built when you repeatedly act with courage, when you take risks despite fear, when you stay steady under pressure. The more you prove yourself through consistent action, the less you need to exaggerate or diminish. And the less you exaggerate or diminish, the quieter doubt becomes. Think about someone you've met who carries this balance. They don't need to boast, yet you feel their presence. They don't need to apologize for existing, yet they remain approachable and grounded. That kind of balance is magnetic. Why? Because it radiates authenticity. Self-doubt cannot survive in authenticity. It feeds only on distortion, whether inflated or diminished. So here's the mindset shift. Reject the extremes. Don't bury yourself in false humility, and don't puff yourself up with empty ego. Stand in the middle, rooted in truth. Acknowledge your strengths, admit your flaws, carry yourself with dignity. When you walk this line, you silence doubt, because you're no longer pretending to be less or more than you are. You're simply being who you are, and that is always enough. This balance is freedom. It frees you from constantly proving yourself to others. It frees you from constantly questioning yourself in silence. It allows you to act with steady confidence that no applause or criticism can shake. And in that steadiness, self-doubt dies, not with noise or drama, but with quiet certainty that you don't need to be anything other than your true self. Recover from setbacks with resilience. Self-doubt feeds most aggressively in the moments when you stumble. Failure, rejection, disappointment. These are the breeding grounds where doubt whispers its cruelest words. See? You weren't ready. You're not capable. You'll never make it. Many people hear that voice and believe it. They stop trying after one rejection, shrink back after one mistake, and carry each setback like a permanent scar. But setbacks are not proof of inadequacy. They are proof of engagement. They show you dared, you acted, you lived. The true mindset shift, the one that kills doubt at its root, is to recover from setbacks with resilience, to see every fall not as evidence that you're weak, but as training that makes you unshakable. Resilience is not about pretending failure doesn't hurt. Pain is real, rejection stings, disappointment can cut deep. But resilience is the choice to rise again anyway. It is the decision that no matter how many times life knocks you down, you will stand back up with lessons in your hands. Champions are not champions because they never lose. They are champions because they never let losing define them. Every stumble becomes part of their foundation, not the reason for collapse. Think about Thomas Edison, who famously failed thousands of times before inventing the light bulb. Imagine if he had listened to self-doubt after attempt 1, or attempt 50, or even attempt 500. Doubt would have said, "Stop embarrassing yourself. Clearly, you're not capable." But he reframed each failure as progress. One more way not to make a light bulb. That shift in perspective is resilience, and that resilience leaves doubt with nothing to argue against, because the story is no longer about failure, it's about refinement. The Stoics embraced setbacks as part of life's natural rhythm. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." In other words, you need adversity to grow. Every setback is friction that polishes you, tests you, strengthens you. Self-doubt wants you to see trials as a stop sign. Resilience reframes them as a sharpening stone. And once you believe that, doubt begins to starve. So, how do you practice this resilience in daily life? Start with reframing. When you encounter a setback, instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What can this teach me?" This simple shift changes the meaning of failure from punishment to preparation. You stop seeing yourself as unlucky or unworthy, and you start seeing yourself as a student in training. And the mind that is learning cannot simultaneously be doubting. It is too busy growing. Second, shorten your recovery time. Many people waste weeks, months, even years replaying a failure. Each replay feeds doubt like oxygen to a fire. Instead, adopt the champion's mindset. Process the pain, extract the lesson, and move forward. The quicker you rise, the less space doubt has to entrench itself. Champions don't wallow, they re-enter the arena. And with each re-entry, they prove to themselves that a stumble is not the end. Third, anchor resilience in identity. Instead of saying, "I failed," say, "I am someone who gets back up." Make resilience part of who you are, not just what you do. When you define yourself as the person who always returns, doubt loses its sharpest weapon. Because no matter what happens, the outcome is never final. You will rise again. Picture your own setbacks right now, the opportunities you missed, the times you felt embarrassed, the doors that closed in your face. What if you reframed all of them as training? What if every rejection was practice for resilience? What if every failure was just weight on the barbell of your character, making you stronger with every lift? Suddenly, doubt's story collapses. It cannot tell you you're finished because you've already chosen to keep moving. Here's the mindset shift. Setbacks are not evidence that you are incapable. They are evidence that you are in motion, that you are striving, that you are alive in the arena. Resilience turns them from wounds into wisdom, from losses into lessons. And when you embrace resilience, self-doubt loses its grip, because it cannot defeat someone who refuses to stay down. So the next time you fall, remember, the fall is not your identity. The rise is. Choose resilience. Stand back up. Each recovery adds another layer of proof that you are stronger than you once believed. And with enough proof, self-doubt has nowhere left to hide. Create daily habits for inner peace and confidence. Self-doubt doesn't usually appear as a thunderstorm crashing into your life. It creeps in slowly, like fog. It grows in the small spaces you leave unguarded, the mornings you start in chaos, the days you drift without structure, the nights you end with restless thoughts. Without rhythm, without anchors, your mind becomes fertile soil for doubt. This is why building daily habits is not just about productivity or self-improvement. It is about survival. Habits create stability, and stability destroys doubt. Because when you know how your day is shaped, when you begin and end with practices that ground you, your mind has no space to spiral into insecurity. Think about it. Most doubt surfaces in moments of idleness. When you're lying awake, scrolling endlessly, procrastinating on the work you know you should be doing. In those gaps, your mind starts whispering, "You're falling behind. You're not disciplined. You're not enough." But when you fill those gaps with intentional habits, small acts of clarity, focus and care, doubt loses its oxygen. You replace noise with order, confusion with direction. Daily habits are not glamorous. They don't get applause. No one will cheer when you meditate for 10 minutes, write a page in your journal, or stretch your body before bed. But these seemingly small rituals are bricks in the fortress of mental strength. They are daily declarations. I take myself seriously. I choose consistency over chaos. And every time you repeat them, you deepen your trust in yourself. Trust, repeated, becomes confidence, and confidence suffocates doubt. The Stoics understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius wrote about beginning each morning by preparing his mind for challenges, reminding himself that he would encounter selfish, ignorant, and arrogant people, and yet he could choose his response. That was his habit, mental rehearsal. Epictetus taught the habit of distinguishing what is in your control and what is not, a daily exercise in clarity. Their wisdom wasn't random inspiration, it was routine. They treated philosophy not as something to think about occasionally, but as something to practice daily. Modern psychology agrees, habits shape identity. When you do something every day, you're not just performing an action, you're telling yourself who you are. If you meditate daily, you're not someone who tries to be calm. You are a calm person. If you train your body daily, you're not hoping to be fit. You are an athlete in training. Identity built on habits is much stronger than identity built on fleeting emotions. And once your identity solidifies, doubt struggles to crack it. So what habits actually build inner peace and confidence? Start with the basics. Morning habits that ground you before the world makes demands. A short meditation, a gratitude list, or even 5 minutes of deep breathing. These create mental stillness that carries into the rest of your day. Then, habits of discipline, consistent exercise, journaling, focused work blocks. These strengthen the muscle of self-control, proving to yourself daily that you can rely on you. Finally, evening habits that calm the mind, reflection, reading, or simple routines that signal closure. When you end your day with peace, you begin the next one with strength. The power of these habits is not in their size, but in their consistency. Self-doubt loves inconsistency. It feeds on broken promises, on "I'll start tomorrow," on the guilt of stopping and starting over. But when your habits are consistent, even small, you build a chain of proof that you can trust yourself. That proof is louder than doubt's whispers. Ask yourself this: if your daily habits are seeds, what are you planting right now? Are you planting chaos, distraction, and inconsistency? Or are you planting clarity, peace, and discipline? Because the harvest will come either way. And when you build habits that align with your highest self, the harvest is confidence. So here's the mindset shift. Stop waiting for confidence to appear in the big moments. Build it quietly in the small ones. Let your habits be the architects of your mind. Each time you choose to follow through, you create inner peace. Each time you repeat, you create trust. And over time, these habits create a foundation so solid that doubt has nowhere left to settle. Daily habits are your silent allies. They don't make noise, but they build noise-proof walls in your mind. And when your day is anchored in clarity, your life becomes anchored in confidence. That's how habits destroy doubt. Not with one dramatic action, but with 1,000 quiet repetitions. Master emotional control under pressure. Self-doubt is rarely born in calm, quiet moments. It shows up in the heat of pressure, the job interview where your voice shakes, the performance where your heart races, the argument where your emotions take over. In these moments, your emotions become louder than your reason, and doubt seizes the opportunity to whisper, "See, you can't handle this. You're not in control." That's why one of the most critical mindset shifts for destroying self-doubt forever is learning to master your emotions when the stakes are high. Because when you can stay calm under pressure, you send yourself the clearest possible message. I can trust me, and that trust dismantles doubt at its core. Emotional control does not mean suppression. Suppression is denial. It's pretending you don't feel what you feel. But denial always backfires. Suppressed emotions don't disappear. They resurface stronger at the worst possible time. True control means awareness. It means noticing the surge of fear, anger, or anxiety, and choosing not to let it drive the car. You acknowledge the feeling, but you remain the one holding the wheel. That ability is what separates those who crumble under pressure from those who shine. The Stoics practiced this daily. Epictetus taught that it is not events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. Pressure itself is neutral. A stage, an interview, a confrontation, none of these contain fear in themselves. Fear comes from the story you attach. I might fail. They might laugh. I might lose everything. Once you realize emotions are born from interpretation, you can begin to rewrite the story. Instead of, "This pressure is unbearable," you tell yourself, "This is my chance to rise." That reframing alone can silence the voice of doubt, because it changes pressure from a threat into an opportunity. Think about the great athletes who step into the final moments of a championship game. The crowd is roaring, the clock is ticking, everything is on the line. Most people would crumble under that weight, but champions remain composed. Why? Because they've trained their emotional control. They've rehearsed pressure so many times in their mind and in practice that the game does not shake them. They still feel the nerves, but the nerves don't own them. That composure is confidence. And it is available to all of us, not just athletes, if we are willing to train. So how do you build this skill in your own life? Start by slowing your response. When pressure spikes, your heart pounding before a presentation, your anger rising in a conflict, pause. Breathe deeply. Give yourself a few seconds before reacting. That pause is power. In that gap, you remind yourself that you are in control, not your fear. Over time, this simple act rewires your brain. Instead of associating pressure with panic, you begin to associate it with presence. Next, prepare through exposure. Doubt thrives in unfamiliarity. The more foreign a high-pressure situation feels, the more likely your emotions will take over. But if you deliberately put yourself in small, controlled doses of pressure, speaking up in meetings, practicing difficult conversations, volunteering for challenges, you begin to normalize it. Each exposure builds resilience. Each success, no matter how small, teaches your brain, "I can handle this." Another key is self-talk. Under pressure, the voice of doubt often becomes deafening. You must learn to replace it with a voice of calm authority, not empty cheerleading, but grounded reminders. I've prepared. I've done this before, I can trust myself. This kind of talk isn't about lying to yourself. It's about bringing your mind back to evidence, back to truth. You've survived every pressure moment before this one. You will survive this one too. Imagine how different your life would feel if you could carry composure into every storm. No more shrinking in the moments that matter most. No more collapsing when eyes are on you. Instead, you would become someone who thrives in the spotlight, not because you never feel fear, but because you've mastered your ability to stay steady within it. That steadiness is the ultimate antidote to doubt. So here's the mindset shift. Pressure is not your enemy. Pressure is proof that you're in the arena, that you're alive, that you're striving for something worthy. When you master your emotions in those moments, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than fear, bigger than anxiety, and capable even when your heart races. And once you've proven that to yourself enough times, self-doubt no longer has ground to stand on, because the voice inside you now says with calm certainty, "I can handle this." Emotional control under pressure is not a luxury. It's the skill that transforms self-doubt into self-trust. Train it, practice it, live it. The more you do, the quieter doubt becomes, until one day you realize it has been replaced entirely by composure, by confidence, by unshakable belief in yourself. Train discipline as your superpower against doubt. If there is one truth about self-doubt, it's that it grows strongest in the absence of action. When you hesitate, procrastinate, or break promises to yourself, doubt multiplies. It feeds on inconsistency. It whispers louder every time you say you'll do something and then don't. Over time, it convinces you that you can't trust yourself, that you're unreliable, that you'll never follow through. And once you believe that, self-doubt becomes your constant companion. The antidote to this? Discipline. Because discipline is the daily proof that you are capable, that you are trustworthy, that you can count on you. Discipline is not just a habit, it's a superpower. And when you train it, you strip doubt of its favorite weapon. Most people think discipline is about restriction, about living a rigid life with no joy. But true discipline is freedom. It frees you from the chaos of inconsistency, from the anxiety of unfinished tasks, from the guilt of broken promises. Discipline is the quiet voice that says, "I'll do it, even if I don't feel like it." And each time you act on that voice, you plant a seed of self-trust. Those seeds grow into confidence, and confidence kills doubt. Think of the times in your life when you felt most secure in yourself. Chances are they weren't when you got lucky breaks or praise from others. They were when you followed through, when you committed to a workout routine and stuck with it, when you promised yourself you'd finish a project and you did, when you overcame the urge to quit and pushed one step further. Those moments are confidence built from evidence. And discipline is how you create that evidence every single day. The Stoics lived by discipline. Their entire philosophy was rooted in self-control over thoughts, desires, and actions. Epictetus taught that freedom is impossible without discipline, because without it, you are a slave to impulse. And what is self-doubt if not an impulse of the mind? A reflex that rises whenever you face uncertainty. With discipline, you don't wait for motivation. You don't wait to feel ready. You simply act, because that's who you've trained yourself to be. Training discipline begins small. It might be waking up at the time you said you would, even when your body begs for 5 more minutes. It might be sticking to a study schedule, finishing a piece of writing, or saying no to distractions. Each of these is like lifting a weight for your mind. At first it feels heavy, uncomfortable, but with repetition it becomes natural. And as your discipline grows, so does your belief in yourself. The connection between discipline and doubt is simple. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you prove to yourself that you are reliable. Doubt says, "You won't." Discipline answers, "I did." Doubt says, "You're weak." Discipline answers, "I've trained my strength." Over time, doubt's voice becomes irrelevant because the evidence of your discipline drowns it out. There is another layer here. Discipline creates consistency, and consistency is what transforms identity. A person who meditates daily doesn't just practice calm, they become calm. A person who writes daily doesn't just try to be a writer, they are a writer. A person who exercises consistently doesn't just hope to be healthy, they embody health. And once identity is reshaped through discipline, self-doubt no longer fits. It cannot survive in the presence of a self that has been proven through repeated action. So, how do you apply this practically? Pick one area of your life where doubt is loudest. Maybe it's your work, your health, your creativity. Then choose one simple, repeatable action in that area. Commit to it daily, no matter how small. Don't wait for motivation. Motivation is fleeting. Discipline is permanent. Over time, this small act compounds into evidence, and evidence is what silences doubt. Here's the mindset shift. Discipline is not punishment. It is self-respect in action. It is the declaration that your goals, your dreams, your commitments matter enough to follow through. And each time you honor them, you prove to yourself that you are stronger than hesitation. That proof is how you destroy doubt, not in one dramatic moment, but in the steady rhythm of daily discipline. So the next time doubt whispers, "You can't," respond with discipline. Act anyway. Each action becomes a brick in the wall between you and insecurity. Build that wall high enough, and one day you'll look back and realize doubt has been locked out entirely. That's the superpower of discipline. It doesn't just silence doubt, it eliminates the need to question yourself at all. Reframe failure as growth, not proof of inadequacy. Failure is the favorite weapon of self-doubt. When things don't go as planned, when you fall short, make mistakes, or face rejection, doubt doesn't hesitate to step in. It whispers, "See? You weren't good enough. This is proof. You should have never tried in the first place." For many people, that single moment of failure becomes a verdict on their entire identity. Instead of treating failure as an event, they wear it like a label. And nothing feeds self-doubt more than believing failure equals inadequacy. The mindset shift that destroys this is learning to reframe failure, not as proof of weakness, but as undeniable evidence of growth. Let's start here. Failure is not optional. If you live, if you act, if you attempt anything of significance, failure is guaranteed. The only way to avoid failure is to avoid trying at all, which means to live so small that you suffocate in mediocrity. But here's the paradox. The more you risk failing, the more you grow. Failure isn't the end of progress. It is progress, disguised as a lesson. Once you reframe it this way, failure stops being ammunition for doubt and becomes fuel for resilience. Think about a child learning to walk. They stumble, fall, and cry dozens of times before they ever take a steady step. If we judge them by the same harsh standards we use on ourselves, we'd say, "Look at all these failures. Maybe they're not cut out for walking." But no one says that. We recognize falling is the process. Each fall strengthens the legs, improves balance, teaches the brain. And eventually the child walks, then runs. The same principle applies at every stage of life. Failure is falling forward. It is not proof that you're unworthy. It's proof that you're moving. History is full of examples of people who redefined failure. Michael Jordan, often called the greatest basketball player of all time, once said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. Notice what he did. He reframed failure as training. Every miss was practice for victory. If he had treated each miss as proof of inadequacy, he would have quit long before he became a legend. The Stoics also taught this perspective. Seneca reminded us that setbacks are part of the human condition, not a personal curse. Marcus Aurelius wrote that obstacles are not interruptions to life, they are life. If you interpret failure as an attack on your worth, you will collapse under it. But if you interpret it as part of the process, doubt has no ground to stand on, because doubt relies on the idea that failure diminishes you. Once you see failure as growth, that idea dissolves. So how do you train this mindset? First, separate the event from the identity. Failure is something that happened, not who you are. Saying "I failed" is radically different from saying "I am a failure." One is an experience, the other is a false identity. Refuse to give failure that much power. Second, extract lessons deliberately. After every setback, ask, "What can I learn here? What will I do differently next time?" This transforms failure into feedback, and feedback builds improvement. Third, normalize failure by exposing yourself to it often. The more you attempt, the more you'll stumble. But over time, stumbling becomes familiar. It stops feeling like proof of inadequacy and starts feeling like part of the rhythm of growth. Every successful entrepreneur, athlete, and artist has stacks of failures behind them, but they reframed them as tuition for greatness. Imagine if you carried this mindset into your own life. Every rejection letter becomes proof you're applying, putting yourself out there. Every lost deal becomes training for the next negotiation. Every mistake at work becomes a chance to sharpen your skills. In this frame, failure isn't something to fear. It's something to collect, because each one adds strength to your story. Here's the mindset shift. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the price of admission for success. Each setback is evidence that you are trying, learning, moving. Once you begin to see failure as growth, doubt loses its sharpest tool. Because doubt can no longer use mistakes as proof against you. They've already become proof for you. So the next time you fall short, refuse to wear it as a label. Instead, see it as a lesson, a stepping stone, a teacher in disguise. That reframe destroys doubt because you no longer argue with failure, you embrace it. And once you do, every failure becomes another reason to believe you are on your way, not proof that you should quit. Live each day with purpose and clarity. The final mindset shift that destroys self-doubt forever is learning to live each day with purpose and clarity. Why? Because self-doubt thrives most in confusion. It grows in the fog, when you wake up not knowing what matters, when your goals feel vague, when your actions don't connect to something larger. In that uncertainty, the mind fills the gaps with hesitation. Am I wasting my time? Am I on the right path? Maybe I'm not capable of doing anything meaningful at all. Without purpose, doubt becomes your compass. With purpose, doubt has no room to speak. Purpose doesn't have to mean a grand mission to save the world. It begins with a simple clarity, knowing what you value and choosing to live aligned with those values every day. That alignment builds inner strength. When your actions match your principles, you stop second-guessing yourself. You know why you're doing what you're doing, and that knowledge is enough. The clearer your purpose, the quieter your doubt. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and Stoic philosopher, began each morning reminding himself of who he wanted to be and how he wanted to live. He knew the day would bring challenges, distractions, and negativity, but by anchoring himself in clarity first, he stripped those obstacles of their power. That's the lesson. If you don't define your day, doubt will. If you don't decide your direction, hesitation will choose it for you. So how do you bring clarity into your daily life? Start by asking yourself one simple question each morning. What truly matters today? Not what will impress others, not what will keep you busy. What matters? That one answer gives you direction. Then act in alignment with it. When you move through the day anchored in values, whether it's courage, discipline, compassion, or growth, you no longer need constant validation. You've already decided what success means for you. Purpose also requires reflection. At the end of the day, look back and ask, did I live in alignment with what I value? If yes, celebrate it. If no, adjust tomorrow. This daily reflection builds a cycle of self-trust. Over time, you begin to see your life as a series of purposeful choices rather than scattered reactions. Doubt loses its grip because you no longer wonder if you're on the right path. You know you are because you've chosen it deliberately. Another key to clarity is cutting out distractions. Much of self-doubt comes from comparison, from looking left and right at what everyone else is doing, their pace, their success, their approval. But purpose reminds you to look forward, not sideways. Your clarity frees you from the trap of measuring yourself against others. And once you stop measuring, doubt stops multiplying. You no longer ask, am I as good as them? You ask, am I true to me? That single question dissolves more doubt than any praise could. Think about the energy shift that happens when you live without clarity. You wake up anxious, you chase tasks without meaning, you go to bed exhausted but unfulfilled. Compare that to the energy of purpose. You wake up with direction. You move through challenges knowing they serve a larger goal. You go to bed with peace. One life is clouded by self-doubt, the other shines with certainty. The difference isn't talent or luck, it's clarity. The mindset shift is simple but profound. Make purpose your compass and make clarity your daily practice. Even if your larger mission feels unclear right now, choose small purposes, showing up fully at work, being present with family, strengthening your body, expanding your mind. Each small purpose builds into a greater one, and with each clear step, doubt fades into the background. So ask yourself right now, what do I value most? What matters enough that I will choose it today? Write it down. Let that answer guide your decisions. And when doubt whispers, you don't know what you're doing, you'll have an answer. Yes, I do. I know what matters. And I'm living it. When you live each day with purpose and clarity, you don't need external permission, applause, or guarantees. You've already given yourself direction, and in that direction, self-doubt dies, because nothing is more powerful than a mind that knows exactly why it's here and where it's going. Self-doubt is a thief. It robs people of their potential not by force, but by persuasion, by convincing them to shrink, to hesitate, to silence their own voice. But what we've uncovered together is that self-doubt is not truth. It is a habit of the mind, and like any habit, it can be broken. These 12 mindset shifts are not just ideas to think about. They are weapons, tools, and daily practices that dismantle doubt from every angle. When you stop seeking validation and start trusting yourself, when you build strength like a champion, when you turn pain into purpose and let go of what you can't control, doubt loses its foundation. When you visualize a future so clear it pulls you forward, Balance your ego with humility, recover with resilience, and create daily habits that anchor peace. Doubt loses its voice. When you master emotional control under pressure, train discipline as your superpower, reframe failure as growth, and live each day with clarity of purpose. Doubt is not just silenced, it is destroyed. And that is the truth you must carry with you. You are not weak because you feel doubt. You are human, but you are stronger than the voice in your head that tells you to hold back. The power has always been yours, waiting for you to claim it, waiting for you to shift your mindset and step fully into who you were meant to be. So here is my challenge to you. Do not let this be just another episode you listened to and forgot. Pick one shift, just one, and practice it today. Keep that promise to yourself. Write down that vision. Reframe that failure. Anchor yourself in that habit. Let today be the day you choose trust over hesitation. And when you do, you'll begin to feel something extraordinary. The quiet confidence of someone who no longer waits for permission to live. If this episode spoke to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with the shift that resonated most. And above all, subscribe, because each week we will keep building together, one mindset shift at a time, until self-doubt no longer has a place in your life. The voice of doubt may never vanish completely, but once you live these truths, it will never own you again. The power to destroy self-doubt forever is already in your hands. The question is, will you use it?